The Thinking Tackle Podcast.
Welcome to the Thinking Tackle Podcast. Now, with summer in full swing and the banks busy, we thought it was high time that we took a look at staying safe in the sun. So with that in mind, I'm delighted to welcome the gaffer Danny Fairbrass to the studio, along with a very special guest indeed. Dr. Mark Harries has saved multiple lives in his role as a clinical oncologist, and is here to answer your questions on cancer and staying safe in the sun this summer. Mark, thank you so much for battling your way across London. You have my admiration that you were even able to do that after a day's work. I know it can't be an easy job to find your way out to the sticks here, but first of all, I want to jump straight in and get Dan the question that probably everyone wants to know is, how are you?
I'm great, mate. Yeah, I'm good. You know, it's last year was full bore, as everybody saw in the podcast. My recovery was really quick. You know, things look very promising for me at the moment. You're never out of the fight, I think it's fair to say, with it. You know, and I'm because I've had such great training mentally. I'm able to, most of the time, 99.9% of the time, go full steam ahead. I've just done 4 weeks of filming in France. And you just have to live, you know, and make every day count, and you know, just really make the best of things, and that's what I'm doing. If you sit there and worry about it coming back, then you can worry your life away, and that's what I used to be like. And fortunately, I've had good training to be the opposite. So yeah, I'm fighting fit.
Great, and you're having such a sort of a hectic schedule, has that actually helped, Dan, in terms of being able to throw yourself back into work?
No, not really. I wouldn't say so. I would say if you're a worrier, and I'm sure there are loads of people out there who are worriers, brooders, as they're called in psychology terms, then it's those quiet moments when you're on your own at the end of a day, when you're waiting to go to sleep, or you first wake up in the morning and no one else in the house is up yet. That it's very, very easy for those sort of catastrophic, paranoid, negative thoughts to come in. And it's just the fact that I've had such great training and I've put so much effort into banishing them and not looking at it like that, and being grateful, which is opening your eyes for another day, which I never used to be. You know how highly strung I used to be, and how everything had to be perfect all the time, otherwise it's the end of the world. Well, this actually is the end of the world, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? If this got you, and I think, you know, it sounds weird, but it's probably been the making of me, to be honest. Having to deal with this sort of hardship and the threat of something coming back that could kill you, and it sort of forced me to either get strong or get gone, you know. Yeah, it's not every day. You know, sometimes I have a tough afternoon, tough evening, whatever. But you know, I'm very proud of the fact that I can operate at the level I operate at with something like this looming in the background. You know, and that every day you do that gives you more strength. If you congratulate yourself for having got through a day. You know, because I wasn't like that at the start. I was like not sleeping, crying my eyes out, all that. When you first get the news that you've got cancer, you've got melanoma, like, oh, it's only skin cancer, but it can still kill you. You know, and like that really, really, really got to me, and I had to rigorously train my brain out of that way of thinking. And now I have. It's a rarity that I even give it a second thought.
Now, Mark, before we come to you, I think, Dan, we really need to identify, why are we here? What is it about the timing for this podcast that's interesting to you?
Well, we're a year past the other one. You know, that was May of last year. The sun has come out. Like I say, I've just been in France for 4 weeks. We hadn't had a drop of rain all of April, and we're well into May now. And it's just about keeping up the impetus, keeping up the attention on the fact that you should enjoy the sun, but you should respect it, you know. And Mark's the man that's basically kept me alive over the last 5 years, obviously with the help from my own body. But, you know, I've always wanted to do this, you know, and have an absolute expert come in and try and convince people that are still sticking their head in the sand or out in the sun, that they need to take it seriously. Who, if it's coming from an expert and he's backing it up with data and many years of experience, then hopefully all it's about is convincing people to take it seriously, convincing people that if they're worried about that they've got a mole or they've got a lump or whatever, to act. If people protect themselves from the sun and act if they've got something that they're concerned about, then this has been a success.
Now, Mark, I think it's be a good point to really establish for people what we're talking about here, and that is largely melanoma. Would you be able to really paint us a picture of what melanoma is and how it affects people?
Absolutely. So melanoma is one of the most common cancers nowadays, particularly in the sort of group of people who are tuned in watching us today. So the younger population, middle-aged population, melanoma has become one of the commoner cancers, and not many people realize that. And it's a skin cancer, and it's a cancer that arises in the pigment-forming cells, which are predominantly found in the skin. Interestingly, those cells are also found in other parts of the body, so actually melanomas can arise from sites other than the skin. But for most people, the first sign of a melanoma is, as Danny's just said, a pigmented lesion, a change in a mole on the skin. And I think the important point here is that caught early, melanoma has an absolutely excellent outlook for the majority of people. There are a few unlucky people where there can be trouble, but if it's caught early, then it's a very curable cancer for the vast majority of people. So hence what we're trying to do is get this message across. This is a common cancer. It's going to affect people that you know, but if caught early, the outlooks are excellent. And there's no shame in spotting a lesion on your skin and saying, well, look, you know what, I'm actually going to do something about that. I'm not going to put my head in the sand. I'm going to seek medical advice. I'm going to see my GP, say, look, this mole's changed. This wasn't here before. What do you think? Get it checked out. That's the message. So it's a type of skin cancer, caught early, excellent outlook. And if it spreads, still the outlook can be good, but it's just more uncertain.
Okay. We're going to talk a lot about prevention, but let's talk a little bit about cause first. What are the lifestyle elements that contribute to people getting a melanoma?
So for melanoma that arises in the skin, particularly in fair-skinned people, the commonest cause by far and away is sun exposure. And that goes for all skin cancers, and melanoma's no exception there. So excessive sun exposure in fair-skinned populations leads to a huge increase in the number of people who get melanoma. And you see this in Australia, you see this in South Africa, you see this in Florida, where people with fair skins live. They get a lot of sun exposure, and the rates of skin cancer in those climates have just gone absolutely rocketing. But over the last 20 and 30 years in this country, we're starting to see more and more skin cancers as people spend more time with their hobbies, with their pursuits in the sun, like fishing or going on summer holidays. So it's sun exposure. And we think it's sun exposure, particularly for melanoma, we think it's sun exposure in early life that's important. So the message is not going only out to those adults who are watching, but also for those of you with children. It's all about sun exposure in early life that predispose, particularly burning sun exposure. So sunburns, intensive exposure, for example, to things like sunbeds. We think those predispose people to get melanoma in later life. So that's the cause.
When you say early years, what do you mean?
Well, I don't think you can be too early on this with our children. I think we need to be really careful almost as soon as they start playing outside. Now, there's a balance to be had, like many things in life, because we do want to encourage our children to be outside. We want them to get a certain amount of ultraviolet light exposure, for vitamin D exposure, and all of the good things that come from being outside. But what we must try and prevent our children doing is getting sunburnt. That's the key message. And also that they don't need to, as they become teenagers, they don't need to get a suntan through sun exposure. If they really want to look a different color, there's all sorts of other techniques out there, artificial tanning, etc. So avoiding sunburns and avoiding excessive sun exposure from the earliest you can go.
So not effectively go on holiday, enjoy it, but not sunbathing, not sun worshipping,
Exactly.
laying out in it for 10
Exactly.
hours a day for 2 weeks. Because when I was young, that was the thing. Your holiday was judged on how brown you were when you
Absolutely.
came home. Did you have a brilliant holiday? Yes. Look how brown I am.
Absolutely, and I was part of that generation. Don't get me wrong. I'm practicing, what I preach now. But when I was 17, 18, going backpacking around the Greek islands, I remember going into restaurants, getting olive oil from the table, putting olive oil on my skin, and basically cooking myself like a fried chicken.
Amazing.
So
I'll tell you what, Mark, it's not done too bad because you've barely got a wrinkle.
I think
There's only 27 though, mate.
I think that's the second thing to say about
Yeah.
what are the risk factors, and then you have to there's genetics as well. So obviously our skin type is genetically determine the color of our skin, and I think there's a certain amount of genetics in this as well, to do with aging and sun exposure.
Is there genetics beneath simply just the skin color and the depth of the color?
Yeah, there is a little bit, but I don't want to overcomplicate it, because actually a genetic predisposition to melanoma, although it does exist, is incredibly rare. There are a few families who do have that. The vast majority of us, it's the skin type we have, the fair skin populations being more likely to get skin cancers than the darker skin populations. Not exclusively, by the way, but as a general rule.
We've got a bunch of questions,
Yeah.
Mark, that we put out an appeal with you, Dan, didn't we? And actually, the people have responded, and we've been through and had a little look. And actually, I just want to come to one question here straight away. I was going to perhaps bring them in a little bit later, but this first question relates to what we just talked about. So I think if we dive straight in, John has written in and said, "Hi. The question I would like to ask is, I think people in my age range of 30 to 40 all experienced severe sunburn in their youth before sun cream and sun care was taken seriously enough. I even remember girls using baby oil to tan better. What are the statistics for the increased risk this generation now face in terms of melanoma risk, i.e. how bad does sunburn have to have been to significantly increase your risk in later years?"
Well, I think if you can remember sunburn, and particularly remember more than 3 or 4 episodes of sunburn, then that's probably a significant amount of sunburn that you've had. Now, obviously, some of us won't remember sunburns we've had when we're very young, but we think that a few incidents of severe sunburn can really increase risk of skin cancer. So skin cancer, melanoma is becoming the commonest cancer. One of the commonest cancers in that exact age group. So it's those sun exposures. So if you can remember a few sunburns, you probably have increased your risk of getting skin cancer as you get older.
So the important thing isn't in fact what the people of 30 to 40 are doing now, it's what they did when they were kids in the 80s and 90s.
Yes and no, because obviously we can't prevent what we were exposed to before, and I was one of those kids, but what we can do is prevent the cumulative sun exposure. So we've got 2 types of sun exposure. We've got the very intense sunburn that we can get, or sunbed exposure, which we may not be able to do anything about for ourselves anymore. But then there's also the slow trickling sun exposure, hours on end of more chronic sun exposure that can predispose not only to skin aging, but also the other types of skin cancer. So the non-melanoma skin cancers, known as basal cell carcinomas, squamous cell carcinomas, we think they're linked to cumulative sun exposure. And I suspect in your world, when you see older fishermen on the banks, they might have a few scars around their noses and their cheeks and things like that, and they will have had cut out those non-melanoma skin cancers. And you see that in farmers, and you see it in anyone who's worked outside.
There's a guy at Stanton, one of the lakes that I fish in Oxford, and he's had 7 or 8 bits cut out of him, and he's got skin grafts on his face, and he's a teacher now, and he's got to be in his 50s, Paul, and he said basically he's been a roofer all his young life, up on the roofs, never wore a shirt, the whole time, just never wore. Workmen don't wear suntan lotion, do they?
They definitely don't.
And that's a huge group of anglers are guys that are roofers, are builders, are working out in the elements all the time, and you're getting grubby and dirty, so you're not going to apply lotion. No. But what is the answer for those guys that are travelling up in a van? They've all got high vis on.
Yeah.
What do they do?
Well, I think it has to be down to clothing, hasn't it? If you can't practically put on sun cream, but there are these great sun creams now that aren't expensive, that aren't sticky, greasy. Again, it's just changing the culture, isn't it? It's making it okay to do that, or wear the clothing that covers up your back or something. It doesn't have to be fancy, just anything that just sort of gives you some protection. And if we look at Australia now, so there's a lot of roofers in Australia, lots of people who do these very outdoorsy jobs, but the whole culture in Australia has changed now. The incidence of skin cancer, melanoma is starting to come down because they've all getting this message about putting on sun cream, slip, slap, slop, sun hats, and
I remember when I've been there, you see them by the side of the road, and they've got like the sort of camel-coloured kit on with like long sleeves, massive wide-rimmed hats, long trousers. And there's no more manly man than an Australian man, is there?
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? So if they've been able to take it on, our guys really, because it does. You see a lot of guys, even they turn up at the lakes and they've still got their kit on from what they've been digging ditches or whatever all day, and they've just got a high vis on with no sleeves. It's undone at the front. There's no hat. They've got shorts on, and that's the most they're going to wear. So that culture needs to change.
I think it does need to change for people. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we keep referring to culture, and I saw the reports about how I think we've overtaken Australia in terms of incidents because they were able to institute cultural change from school upwards, whereas we haven't done that, have we? And
no.
I know we're going to talk about much more of the practical implications for anglers, but we've all got kids, or a lot of us have kids. Do you think there's a case to be made that from school age, we need to be educating kids more about
very much so, and there are various charities, including one I'm involved with, that called Melanoma Focus, that's very much trying to get this message across in schools. It's not that many months in the UK where you need to be aware of this, is it? It's sort of May to October maximum, and it's just, again, simple things in the schoolyard. Wearing a hat, having sun cream available. All of those, relatively simple things that I think, is going to just create, those children will grow up just knowing that's just what you do.
Yeah. I had to sign a piece of paper the other day to sort of allow the teacher to reapply sun cream. It seems like there are still impediments to this working in a kind of fluid and sort of unimpeded fashion.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear that. Yeah.
It should just be common sense. I feel like I'd rather they were just able to do it.
Yeah, I would have thought so. But yeah, people are working hard to try and get those messages out for school children.
Yeah. That sort of thing's got to come through kids' television, isn't it? More than anything, like the kids are glued. My little girl glued. CBeebies, CBBC now. She's a bit older. She thinks she's old enough to watch CBBC, and if they see it on there, if Dr. Ranj says it, Dr. Ranj says it is the truth, and you've got to take it seriously. And that's, they're if there's anyone listening that is working in those industries and making kids television, that is the way to get it through. I'd love to see Violet just wearing like baggy long trousers, like long baggy shirt or whatever when she's out in the playground or like all day, rather than a traditional little girl's dress and her legs are exposed, her arms are exposed.
It's no coincidence that one of the commonest places that women get skin cancer and melanoma is their legs, and we think a lot of that's from exactly what they wore when they were children, wearing skirts and things. And for men, it's the trunk. Again, coming back to what you were saying, us guys, we like, as soon as it's hot, we like to get our shirts off and whatever.
Especially as your kids are all running around like
so
swallows and Amazons.
Exactly. So for the
sun's out, guns out, Tobe, isn't it?
Exactly.
That's what they say.
Shoot. Mark, I think it'd be a really good point actually before we move through these questions to talk a little bit about what drew you into the field. You're now extremely specialised. It can't have started out like that, I guess.
No, it started out like many things in life. One has to be, and Danny was making this point, grateful for what happens at you. And I'm very eternally grateful for two things that happened that have led me into this field. One is pure luck. I ended up with one of my first jobs was in a cancer ward, which I thought, God, oh no, I've been rotated to the cancer ward. That's going to be really grim. And it just blew me away, the experience there. These young adolescents, sort of teenagers with cancer, being cared for in the most beautiful way by the nurses, incredibly dedicated team of doctors. And I thought, God, this is really important. and this is really special. I thought, God, I want to do this. I want a part of this. So that led me to getting a job at a big cancer centre called the Royal Marsden, and I fell very much under the wing of a famous oncologist there called Martin Gore, bless his soul, who's died sadly. But he became my mentor, and he was very interested in melanoma skin cancer. And he basically got me interested in this world. And this is going back 20 or 30 years now, probably 25 years. And there were no good treatments at that point for melanoma if it had spread. As I mentioned, early melanoma, highly curable. But back in the day, if it had spread, no good treatments at all. And Martin had dedicated his whole career to try and find treatments that were effective for advanced stages of melanoma. And he died a couple of years ago, so he saw the new treatments that have come in. So he went through that phase. But anyway, he got me interested in this world. I don't think I'd ever heard of melanoma before, or what it was, or even that oncologists got involved in it. And so I started, with Martin's help, researching it. I did a PhD in immune therapy.
Sorry, were you a junior doctor at this point?
Very much a junior, very junior. Yeah, I was an SHO.
And melanoma wasn't even on your radar, having gone through that.
I think I knew. I mean, I probably would have known what it was, but nothing much more than that. Or that it was important, or that that we, I assumed it was something that dermatologists dealt with, and that was it. But then going to the Marsden, and again seeing quite young patients suffering from quite advanced stages of this disease is very, very eye-opening, I must say. Yeah. And then Martin was this larger-than-life character, very, very funny man. Just to give you an idea of the humour of this man. So on my first day at work, I turned up very nervous as a very junior doctor. I said, "Hello, Dr. Gore. I'm your new houseman." It's called, the very junior. I'm your new houseman, Mark Harries. He said, "Don't call me Dr. Gore. Nobody calls me Dr. Gore." Well, my wife calls me Dr. Gore, but no one else calls me no one else calls me Dr. Gore. And he was just full of wit and charm, and I've never and if I have any bedside manner whatsoever,
you do definitely.
Then
I can vouch for that.
I can thank Martin for showing me how to treat patients with dignity, respect, but also keep a little bit of a sense of humour and keeping.
It's so important it's so important for anyone listening who is a health professional. Bedside manner makes so much difference to your experience of going through any sort of serious health situation, and that there are people out there who are very to the point, and they're not lying to you, but they just struggle to communicate it in a positive way, and you just walk out of the meetings with them and you just think, that's it, I'm dead. That's it. If they've got them those sort of thoughts anyway, if you've got any form of negative thinking or paranoia or catastrophizing or anything like that, you're hanging on every word. When you're not well, you are hanging on every word. And during one of the treatments, one of the doctors said to me, we don't say cure, Mr. Fairbrass, we say suppress. And I think, well, so this is going to kill me. It's just a question of time, And it's like, didn't need to say that. No. It's not going to make me any better by saying that to me. And I'm sure that is the truth, but it's like, I don't know. So clearly you have learnt a fantastic skill, and if you've learnt some of it off of that guy, I'm sure you'll like it anyway. But if you've learnt it off of that mentor, it makes so much difference to us.
Sorry, really, Mark, can I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
With regards to obviously learning to be a doctor and stuff like that, is bedside manner something that's taught in that process? For example, do you have lessons or lectures or whatever?
I think it is now. But back in the day, no.
So that was just something that you pick up by yourself?
Absolutely. And back in the day, absolutely no teaching in that. And actually certain specialties, probably you've come across these, some of the surgical specialties, they almost pride themselves on not having a bedside manner. You could see, the junior cardiothoracic surgeons looking up to their bosses thinking, I must be really rude to my patients. Obviously that's the right way to be. That's because they are so there was a lot of learning by experience. So but nowadays, thankfully, a lot of that has improved, and also we're judged. We have to do peer-to-peer judging, and we have to get feedback from people. So the world has moved on. So actually you do find out if you don't have a good bedside manner now,
right?
And you might be picked up on it, hopefully.
Right.
I think we'll dive back into these questions, Mark, but I do have one final thought on your kind of. I don't want to really try and understand on a fundamental level what drew you to medicine. Was it? Well, let's not put words in your mouth. What was it about you that made you interested, do you think?
I think medicine for me, I went through school very quickly. This isn't a boast. I'm young for my year and I was a year ahead. So I was having to make decisions about what to study at university very early on. I think I was choosing my university options when I was 16. And you don't know anything at 16, do you? I mean, I didn't, all I was interested in was whether I was going to be able to be served a pint in the pub. But I was quite bright and I was doing maths, physics, chemistry. And it was clear, everyone said, well, you can either be an engineer, you can be a scientist, or you can be a doctor. And my mum's a doctor. And she knew very early on that if she thought I might be a good doctor. So she realized if she'd suggested it, I would do exactly the opposite. So she got me work experience. With two of her friends.
Right.
Just a day with each. Now, the first guy, bless his soul, is a guy who's a GP in Basingstoke. Now, that doesn't sound very glamorous, but John was also the Lancia rally driving team's team doctor. So he drove around Basingstoke in a Lancia car with a seatbelt that went like this. And there's a lot of roundabouts in Basingstoke. And he went round them at about 90 miles an hour doing his house calls. I thought, this is a good job. I can get a really fancy car.
Right.
And then the other work experience I did was with a paediatrician, so a children's doctor, who was this lovely friend of my mum's, just a lovely guy, a huge smile, and was clearly a big hit with all of the female nurses that he and they were all going doctor so and so. I thought, God, this is a good job as well. so I went. But I remember going back. I said, why did you never suggest I become a doctor?
Yeah.
And my mum goes, I don't think you'd like it. No, I should be an engineer. No, I want to do medicine. So anyway, there was a lot of reverse psychology.
Have you and your mum spoken about this afterwards?
Yeah, I know. And she's funny.
How long did she leave it before
quite a while. She wanted to make sure I didn't duck out of it.
You were past the point of no return.
Because it turned out it was really hard, all the medical student exams and things. Yeah. Well, you didn't tell me that, Mum.
Yeah.
Did we discuss exactly how long it took, to qualify?
So the training in medicine, the quickest you can do it from starting on day one to being qualified as a doctor is 5 years. Most of us took 6 because many people do a BSc or what's called an intercalated year. And then you've got this sort of apprenticeship period of time of a year or two as a very junior doctor where you choose your specialty. Then usually the quickest you can then become a specialist might be 4 or 5 years after that. So if you add all of that up, it's a minimum of sort of 11 years. Now you are being paid as a junior doctor, but it's probably 5-6 years no pay, student, not very much pay, hard, long hours. I'm get your violins out. I'm the era of, very, very long hours, before the European Working Time Directive. I did one job, which was, it was 120 hours a week. I used to work when I was at the London. So, it was long hours.
Contracted 120 hours a week, or you just ended up like that?
It was called a 1 in 2. So the rotas that we were on were a 1 in something or other. So I was on a 1 in 2, which meant I worked every day and every other night and every other weekend. And so there was 2 of us, and obviously the other guy did the other nights. So and he's become a good friend of mine, as you'd imagine. And I got married in that 6-month period, and there was no one to cover. So he did everything for like 2 weeks. He basically had to live in the hospital while I went off to get married, have my honeymoon.
Amazing.
Anyway, he's never forgiven me for that. But he says I still owe him 120 hours times 2.
You must really have a strong calling. Like we've got a strong calling to go carp fishing and to make carp fishing films, but to do that amount of hours when it's really tough work, that you must have a really strong calling.
I think you can do it when you're that age. You can do it when you're that young. I mean, you're 24 or something. Also, medicine used to be, yes, it was really hard work, but it was really, what's changed and the sadness now, it was a real team effort at the time. A lot of people would be in the hospital. There was a lot of fun, a lot of humour, a lot of black humor, dark humor as well as good humor as well. But there was fun, there was excitement, and there was a lot of adrenaline.
Yeah.
And nowadays the hours are better. People quite rightly have got a much better work-life balance. But there's something that's been lost slightly of that team working.
Is it also because there's so many people in hospitals now? Like we're so populated now, aren't we? Like my wife comes, or when I first met her, she lived in a little village. Everybody knew everybody. Everyone was nice to everyone. Those same people, if they move to London, won't acknowledge you in the street.
Yeah.
Turn the other way if you're in trouble on the tube. Same people, because we're all thrown together.
Yes.
It sort of, the community's bigger, but the community spirit is smaller.
I know what you mean. I think it's lots of factors, and but there's definitely, we have lost something of that sort of team working. But so there was definitely a vocation. I feel like I have a vocation to do this, and therefore that, as you guys do, and you feel passionate about it, and you really want to do a good job at doing it. But yeah, it was just what we did at the time as well.
Right. Well, let's do some questions, because I think we're going to talk about parts of your job a bit later on as well. But I'm just going to pick these in no particular order other than what they appear on the page.
Rich, can you just use the first name as well, just in case people don't want to? Yeah.
Okay, so one from Joe here. If we use a low factor like 15 and don't burn as such, i.e. go red and sore, but go brown, is this okay? As in, are we still protected, or should we use complete sunblock like factor 50 or 30?
So I asked my dermatology colleagues about this, because they're obviously real experts in sort of sun cream and things. And the advice is probably partly factor of sun cream, but partly how much you put on and how often you reapply it. And most of us, we get the factor right, but we just put on too little or not often enough. So I think probably you want to be looking for a factor 25. The advice is factor 25 minimum, but keep reapplying it. And yeah, if you are going brown, you probably, sad to say, you probably are getting too much sun. I mean, a little bit of color is probably okay, but really, the sign that you put enough sun cream on is that you're not going brown, really. So you need to reapply them and use more than you think, I think. And it doesn't have to be expensive stuff. The supermarket brands, the standard chemist brands are good, but go for factor 25, plenty of it.
This is I feel naive asking the question, but I was under the impression that the factor related to how long you were protected for under with that particular cream on. Is that in terms of minutes? Is that right?
It's not so much minutes. It's the multiplication factor. So it depends on your skin type. So say you would burn in 10 minutes. Normally, a factor 25 would ideally give you 25 times that amount of time before you burnt.
Okay.
Factor 50 times.
Which obviously for the average person, they're not going to work that out, are they? So perhaps just go high. Is that?
I'd say go high. Go factor 25, and
that's not a common number, is it? 25. It's like factor 30. Because I only wear 50 now.
Yeah.
It's 10, 15, 20. I don't see 25 around very much.
Yeah,
I see 30.
Yeah.
Loads of 30.
So we say
and 50.
above 25 or above.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, get 50.
Yeah.
50 is absolutely great.
Why does the lower factors exist at all?
Well, I think that's again playing into what we were talking about earlier. People really like looking brown, and it's understandable. We've all grown up in that era where people did want to look bronze, didn't they? And they still do. So I think it's for that market basically.
Okay, so actually useless, really, unless you reapply all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So
wow, okay, and the thing for me there, Dan, is that going brown in any way is a risk. Not going red, going brown.
Yeah.
That's news for me.
Yeah,
So
that is news for me as well. So when I because one of my sort of perks, if you like, of this being successful is to have nice holidays with the family. I'm away a lot, so when we go away together, it's a great opportunity to be really with them. So we might be away 2.5, 3 weeks. I'm around the pool with Violet every single day. Not all day. I never sunbathe anymore.
No.
I used to. Now I'm under an umbrella or I'm in the pool with her.
yes,
But I still get a colour.
yeah.
And I'm wearing factor 50.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, I think a little bit of colour. Again, I'm an oncologist, so perhaps some of my dermatology colleagues are sort of militant. Look at them and they're white as a sheet. But I think a tiny bit of colour, on that sort of circumstance, now you're topping up your vitamin D levels, but you're not trying to get you're being very sensible. You're not trying to get, a deep colour. You're just doing it as part of the the day to day, and of the holiday, and I think that's fine.
So parents shouldn't be worried if they're, because my little girl, she got the first sort of pair of brown legs, if you like, not brown, but just a little olivey sort of touch to her legs, because she's reasonably fair, and we, because of what's happened to me, we absolutely smother her in it before she even leaves the hotel room. I don't know if you do that with your little girl, but
Yeah.
strip her off before she puts her swimming costume on, factor 50, like proper rub it in, cake it on, and she's running around while we're getting ready for the pool with nothing on, letting it sink in, and then, you know, and obviously we're reapplying it as well. But she got a little bit of colour to her legs. As parents, should you be completely avoiding that?
I mean, I think again, it's, you don't need to be paranoid about the sun. If you just if you're doing that, then, you know, that's great parenting. I mean, a lot of people won't be doing that.
No, I've seen kids on holidays I've had, nice hotels, mums and dads that have clearly been successful. Kids, you can see their burn in broad daylight. So when they get inside, you know what it's like. You don't even look red, and then you go inside and like, oh my god,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I dread to think, Dan, that, you know, I as kids, like every other kid, seemed to be like luminous pink at some stage during a foreign holiday when I was a kid in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And especially and lads' holidays. You know, I dread to think, but in terms of the vitamin D, stopping the UV, does that stop the absorption of vitamin D as well?
Yeah, and actually the interesting thing about living in the UK is that many of us don't get enough UV. You know, taking sun cream aside, you know, many of us have got indoor jobs. We won't be getting outside enough. You know, our hobbies might be indoors. This is obviously not your world where you're all outside.
Some of our guys might be.
Yeah, a lot of people
inside
be
a lot.
Inside a lot, and then in the winter months, again, very little UV exposure. We think that to get enough vitamin D, you need as little as sort of 10 minutes of UV exposure on your sort of back of your hands, your face, on, you know, for most days in the winter. That's probably enough. But the recommendation now is that for many of us, we probably ought to take a vitamin D supplement in the winter months. So I don't think we need to worry about sun cream blocking our vitamin D. I think probably taking a vitamin D supplement from when the clocks change to when they change back again is not a bad habit to get into.
And that's immune health as well.
Good for your bones, good for your immune health. Lots of things that vitamin D seem to be good for.
Okay, let's move on to Jack has asked us, glad to hear all's going well with Danny's treatment. My question is, and this is to you, Dan, I guess, what was the reason you got checked out in the first place, and what made you think there was a need to get checked?
My wife. So Sophie basically said that dark spot on the back of your arm is new. I don't recognise that. I ignored it for quite a while, quite a few months. I think there's some filming in May of that year where you can see it
on TV now, Dan.
Bosh. Well, that's the September.
Yeah, that was the the footage.
You caused me so much trouble. Well, I caused me so much trouble because it was my ignorance.
Yeah, there it is.
But there it is.
Doesn't it look so innocent?
That's what
Yeah.
terrifies me. I was speaking about it. We'll get onto it later. We'll let a few people get their questions in. But for someone like myself that's littered in moles, when you see that, you think, you know, that could be so easily missed for quite a long period of time.
Yeah.
So Mark, what I can see there is a. I mean, admittedly the resolution is perhaps not great, but that looks like a regular shaped.
I think
what type of melanoma is that?
I think the thing there that makes it stand out is that Danny hasn't got any other moles on the bits of the body you can see. So there's something, you know, probably unlike you, Toby. If you're someone with a lot of moles, then having one of those probably not unusual, and that's probably, you know, just normal moles for a lot of people. But that stands out. You know, that's really looking very different than the rest of your skin, and it was new. So those are the key things. It's not like the other ones. It's new. Those are two rings a few alarm bells. And then if you start to deep, look at it in more detail, you might see it's got a slightly irregular outline, that the pigment isn't uniform. Now, lots of benign moles can have those features, but I think the key thing is change, something that's new, something that's appearing there. And then the other features, you know, the irregularity, the size, change in pigment. Certainly if it's symptomatic, if it's starting to ulcerate, bleed, itch.
What's ulcerate?
Ulceration, you know, a little crater, almost like a little volcano on it.
Right, okay.
So again, or it's bleeding.
Yeah, mine bled.
Yeah.
I remember scratching mine and it bled.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
again just telling you that the tissues are quite friable. They're quite, and again that means that there's probably a cancer there because
Right.
it's growing quite quickly, so the tissues aren't that strong.
In
Right.
terms of, we've seen that Dan's actual melanoma there. In terms of practical checks, what should people be looking for, and should they be looking regularly, for instance?
Yeah, I think it's a good habit to get into, and we're running a campaign this month called Know Your Skin. So if you do hashtag Know Your Skin and look at our charity Melanoma Focus, you'll be directed to what to look out for. But it's knowing what's normal for you and spotting change. I think that's all. And again, once in a while, when you've had a shower, having a good look. Obviously, it's quite hard for us to look at the back of our heads, the back of our legs, and so, if there's anyone in your family who can have a look at those areas and just say, look, this is what I look like. If you spot anything different, just like your wife did, Danny, give it a flag up to me.
And largely speaking, these are areas that are that will have been exposed to the sun.
Yeah,
right?
by and large, you're looking for changes in sun-exposed areas. But again, there are some melanomas that can arise, not only in darker skin populations, but in areas where the sun doesn't shine so much.
Okay. Right. This is a bit of a long one from another Jack. It says, "Hi, Danny and the Korda team. I'm excited for the new podcast. Thank you, Jack. Hopefully we aren't disappointing you so far. My auntie passed away sadly in 2017 due to bowel cancer at a young age of 50. She was the strongest and most happy person ever. So much so, if you were in her company, her bright aura consumed everyone with her and would light up their day and push them through. She was such a caring person around dogs, horses, cats. After her diagnosis happened so quickly, my mum was so upset, the whole family was in shock. One of the saddest things was that she left behind 3 kids. They're not children, all between 30 and 40. And she said she's passed, so much has happened, she was unable to watch her daughter Maxine walk down the aisle at her wedding, or see how successful her 2 other kids are. May she rest in peace, give us all eternal strength in our lives. My question is for Danny, what is the best thing you can turn out of such a bad thing called cancer that we can use in our daily lives as a lesson? And there's a second question, this is for Mark. What is chemotherapy and why is it so important in the fight to beat cancer? And a final note from Jack is that his father was diagnosed with lung cancer last year, and he currently has a daily battle with complex PTSD. Love you, Dan, my hero. I'm so grateful for your podcast about PTSD. You're a massive inspiration to me, and carp fishing has always been my sole saviour in my personal battle, and hopefully one day I would like to meet you. Many thanks. So, Dan, what's the best thing you can turn out of cancer and that he can perhaps use as a daily lesson?
I would say being grateful, just waking up every day and thinking I'm alive still. We have such high expectations, don't we, in this world that we live in? We're expected to be huge successes, super happy, drive a nice car, live in a nice house, have nice holidays, wear nice clothes, have a nice watch. It's all about possession, and the pressure to achieve all those things can really get you down, I think, when you're not achieving it. So to get up every day, as I do now, and just look out and see the wind blowing in the trees, and it sounds corny, and a bit tree huggery, but I genuinely do like it's another day, result, and also to live, have as vital a life as possible and do as much as you can when you can, and don't delay, just do it, go for whatever it is and live it to the full. They're the things that I would say. All my dad's mates all passed away long before him of various different things, heart attacks, loads of different things, and that obviously really got to him, that his friends were dropping like flies, and he's like, Dan, if you can do it, just do it, and I've been like that for 20 years or more, and I was very much a save for a rainy day type of guy, and then I just got to the point of just everyone's live every day like it's your last. Well, you can't do that. That's impossible, because it's you're not gonna throw caution to the winds and just go crazy, because you've got to wake up the next day and deal with the consequences of it. But to be as vital as possible and to make the most of every day, I think is the is the biggest thing.
And it sounds like, you found a way to not be, I feel like I would be transfixed by fear, initially.
I was.
Like unable to function.
I was. And having a life coach, you must have heard me talk about Rob Kelly and the Thrive program. That has made an immeasurable difference to my experience of life, since I've gone through that training program and had more and more coaching sessions from Rob. And I would, anyone that's suffering with any kind of illness like cancer, you have a lot of time to think. You have a lot of time to yourself. Put that time into improving your psychology and your mental health and your mental strength, rather than sitting there worrying about it. Buy the Thrive program book's £40. There's loads of self-help books out there. I'm sure there's loads of books that Macmillan would recommend, or you would recommend to people to take their attention off of I've got this thing and put it into I'm alive. Let's make the most of it. And that.
And Mark, how important is the mental side of the struggle to be free of cancer, or to beat cancer, or to live with cancer?
It's hugely important, I would say. I don't think it's important in the sense of if you've got a positive mental attitude, it makes the cancer go away. No one would think that, but one's ability to withstand the ups and downs, as Danny's articulated, not only the ups and downs of the disease, but the ups and downs of the treatment itself. To have that resilience, to have things to look forward to, things to do, is super important in my experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think Jack's final question was about chemotherapy, which it's a general cancer question, because obviously I don't think it's relevant to
less relevant to melanoma.
Yeah.
Chemotherapy. We don't really use chemotherapy in the traditional sense for melanoma. We use immune therapy, so drugs that stimulate the immune system, and we also use some targeted treatment. Chemotherapy is used in a lot of cancers, but not so much for melanoma.
Perhaps in that case, Mark, it'd be quite interesting to, at least if you can do a sketch of both, just so we understand what we're talking about in terms of treatment. What
do they actually do? I don't even know what chemotherapy. I know it's like poisons your body, but but that's about as much as I know.
So chemotherapy is used for a whole different range of cancers, but predominantly it's used to kill off cancer cells that are either in the local area or have spread somewhere. And chemotherapy is basically a poison. The original chemotherapy drugs were based on poisons. The first chemotherapy drug that was discovered came out of the trenches of the First World War, when it was discovered that the people who'd been gassed by these nitrogen mustard gases had very low white blood counts. And a New York physician thought, well, that could be quite handy if someone has a very high white cell count, i.e. leukemia, and started using these nitrogen mustard poisons to treat people with leukemia. And so they were poisons. They are poisons. They kill rapidly growing cells. So traditional, what's called cytotoxic chemotherapy, simply works on the principle that cancer cells divide quicker than normal cells and have less of an ability to recover than normal cells. So all of the side effects of chemotherapy are basically those parts of the body that do rapidly grow. For example, the hair, the gut, mucosa, the blood cells, they're all rapidly growing cells, so they get affected by chemotherapy. So there's now 40 or 50, maybe more, different chemotherapy drugs. They'll all have some particular nuance or some reason why they're used for a particular tumor type rather than another, but by and large they are poisons killing rapidly growing cells. The really exciting thing that's happened over the last sort of 15-20 years has been the development of all of the targeted therapies, though. And I'll put at the top of that list immune therapy. So these are drugs that don't kill cells. If you just squirted them on cells in a petri dish, a cancer cell, they'd have absolutely no impact at all. These drugs work on your own immune system, and they release the checkpoints that exist in your immune system, take the brakes off, and allow your own body to try and react against the cancer. And the side effects come about with immune therapy because your own immune system can go a bit haywire and start to attack healthy parts of the body. So and then in between chemotherapy, drugs that affect the immune system, you've got very, very targeted therapies that pick out individual Achilles heels in tumours that will be very, very subtle, and they'll also, it'll only work for a particular subtype of cancer. So treatments are becoming more personalised, and hopefully with fewer side effects. I don't think it'll happen in my working lifetime, but I'd love to see a day when we're not using chemotherapy anymore.
It does feel like a blunt instrument from what you've described.
Very blunt, but it can be miraculous.
Yeah.
Famously, Lance Armstrong, the now disgraced but former Olympic and world champion Tour de France cyclist, when he was, I think, late teens, early 20s, he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, testicular cancer. He had it in his brain, his lungs, and he was just treated with a combination of surgery to remove some of the tumours and chemotherapy. He recovered completely and went on to win the Tour de France several times, possibly assisted by a few cocktails.
The thing is, I've seen that documentary is fantastic about him, and everybody was blood doping, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely.
Everyone.
Yeah.
He just got caught.
He got caught.
Well, no, I don't know if he even got caught. Didn't he come clean about it? I think he said that he couldn't say to his one of his child or something. He couldn't lie to them.
Yeah.
And that's what made him come clean about
it, even though all his teammates.
I thought somebody blew the whistle on it.
They did, and
did they?
I think people blew the whistle. He still denied it, and then eventually he came clean. I think when the evidence was too much against him. But anyway.
But that is amazing.
Getting over the cancer, and there's a great picture of him, holding up the prize for whichever race he won, contrasted with him lying in a bed, no hair, looking sick as a dog.
Yeah.
So chemotherapy still has a place, very chemosensitive tumours, but by and large, we're trying to think of cleverer ways of treating cancer.
And a genetic. Will answers lie in
Yeah, that's why the personalised treatments have come out. It's all based on the back of the understanding at the molecular and genetic level what's going on inside a cancer cell and what's going inside the host. So you need to not only understand what drives the cancer and all the little things that are going wrong inside the tumour, but why does person X react to that tumour in that way as opposed to person Y who reacts in a different way. So this subtle interplay between the cancer and the cancer's host, if you like, the person who's got the cancer.
I mean, it's interesting. You almost the way you describe it there. It's one thing that's always slightly revelatory to me is that, or it seems to me at least, that cancer isn't an invader. It is us.
Yeah.
It's our own body.
It's sometimes said to be self and non-self.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It's part of you, but not part of you.
Okay. And it can, and as I understand it, the immune therapy allows our white blood cells to find a cancer that's managed to hide itself.
Yeah, and it's much more successful in certain tumour types than others. So melanoma, it often works fantastically well. Other tumour types, it doesn't work quite so well. But the concept is quite simple. It's the same as what happens when you get infected with a virus or a bacteria. Your immune system recognises the signals that are coming from cells that are in trouble, that are infected, in that case with a bacteria or a virus. But in the case of cancer, it'll recognise the signals that the cells are putting out that something's wrong. These antigens, and the immune system will go and seek it out and go, oh, that's not looking good. Let's destroy those cells.
But somehow the cancer can switch those signals off.
Yeah, exactly so. So the cancer evolves. It's clever. It's just the part of the way that cellular life has evolved. It can evolve. If something's really redundancy. It's the same way that bacteria develop resistance to antibiotics. You'll kill off 99% of cancer cells, but if one can find a way of escaping, survival of the fittest, it'll replicate, and then suddenly you're back to square one.
And it's that sort of escape phase, I think they call it, where that's when the body's in trouble because the cancer can grow quickly, undetected.
Exactly, metastasizing, we call it, spreading. Yeah, exactly so. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Ben has a question about skin color. I am olive-skinned and never wear any sun cream because I don't burn. I just go a nice golden brown as I'm a sun worshipper. Am I right in wearing no sun cream because I don't burn, or should I be more careful and wear sun cream? Look forward to hearing from you.
Well, Ben, the answer is you should be wearing sun cream. And although you're less likely to get skin cancer than people who are fair-skinned who burn easily, but I see quite a lot of patients in my clinic who've got olive complexions who've developed skin cancer. So skin cancer is quite common in Italy.
It is in Spain as well, isn't it? It's very high rates in Spain.
Yeah,
isn't there?
And not just with people with olive skin do get skin cancer. They're less likely to. But I would definitely advise you, Ben, to wear sun cream. Yeah,
and they're less likely to because the is it the melanin levels in the skin actually block the UV? Is that how it works?
So these melanocytes, which are the cells that produce melanin, we've evolved to produce melanin to protect the structures in the skin and in the body from ultraviolet exposure, and that's why you go brown in the sun. The melanin is that sort of barrier, if you like, against the sun. And people who've got darker skin, that's a very effective barrier against a lot of the UV light, but not a total barrier. Some of it will get through, some damage can happen.
So culturally, let's take Spain very briefly. Why, in that case, is there an incidence? Is it because people go brown and culturally they believe that's fine? That actually
it's not a total protection. That's right. So that there will be people with very olive skin who will get skin cancer. In the countries where people have got even darker skin types, again, skin cancer is rare, but it may affect parts of the skin that are non-sun exposed. Very famously, Bob Marley, for example, died of melanoma. Died of melanoma. It arose in his toe. And that wasn't a sun-linked melanoma. That was at the bottom of his toe or his toenail. It's called acral melanoma, a rare subtype. So that wasn't sun exposure, but that was just one of the unusual places where melanoma can form.
How did it occur then? How does that occur?
That's how other cancers can form. So cancers can form because there's a trigger, but a lot of cancers form because, and in the case of melanoma, the trigger being sun exposure, causing ultraviolet light, causing DNA damage. But skin cancers and other cancers can arise spontaneously, just a fault in the DNA of a particular cell.
Right.
So we think that the common cancers, breast cancer, bowel cancer, prostate cancer, there may be some historical triggers, but also it's just as those cells get older, mistakes can occur in the replication that happens in dividing cells, and these mutations can accumulate, and eventually, if you're unlucky, a cell can lose all the normal breaks and become cancerous. So in someone like Bob Marley, his toe, a melanocyte on his toe just just became malignant through DNA mutation.
Right. Wow.
And in a bit of researching very briefly, researching is way too high flown a term for what I actually did last night. But is it right that our bodies are effectively fighting off smaller cancers all the time?
Absolutely.
Our immune system is literally engaged in a battle every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a miracle that we don't get more cancers. I mean, 1 in 2 people get cancer over their lifetime. A lot of those will be early stage cancers that can be very curable, but the facts are 1 in 2. It's a miracle that more of us don't get it, actually, because all our cells are dividing. The dividing mechanism where you have to copy the DNA, you think how many hundreds of thousands of base pairs have got to be copied from one cell to another. It's got to be copied perfectly, otherwise you get a mutation, a change. It's amazing it doesn't go wrong more often. And the 2 things that stop it going wrong, there's this incredible structure of repair, DNA repair, that goes on. If a cell has got the wrong bases, the wrong DNA signals, they get repaired. And then if a cell does go rogue, again, there's checkpoints. The cells can auto digest themselves, or the immune system comes in recognizing the cells. It's amazing.
It blew me away, to be honest, the fact that stuff is going on right now for me that that would suggest that
a lot of stuff's
not
going
something
on.
to be worried about, Rich, though, is it?
No,
You can't do anything
in
about
a way
it.
it sort of normalised the idea that that my body is fighting that every day.
Yeah,
it was an interesting revelation.
I didn't know that at all. You've just totally blown my mind. Like, you couldn't, if we sat down and just went, right, we're going to design the perfect defence system, you couldn't come up with anything as efficient.
It's unbelievably.
Nature finds a way, mate, doesn't it?
So we've almost got some live stuff going on here. Nick has asked us. He's currently in Mallorca on holiday, and his question is: I'm using P20 factor 50 morning and afternoon, yet I still burn. It is, of course, uncomfortable, but is there anything stronger out there I can use to prevent me from staying in the shade and being a social butterfly all the time? I'm 33, and this has always been the case for me. Any help would be appreciated. So,
yeah, I think by P20 he's referring to a particular brand.
Yeah,
of
it's a
sun
brand.
cream.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think that brand doesn't suit everyone because it's very transparent, and it's I think it's very nice to apply. It's not greasy and everything, but I think if it's the one I'm thinking of,
that's the one I use as well.
Yeah, I think what he needs is more of a barrier,
Right.
Something with more pigment in it, basically.
So this is the big thing for me, right? Because I have fair skin.
Yeah.
I use P20 because I was under the impression that it was kind of a slap it on and you'll be okay for most of the day. But
again, coming back a little bit to what I said before, that's what they want us to think. But again, if you are using one that says you only use once a day, I'd really take that with a pinch of salt.
Dangerous though.
I would,
we've been marketed to.
It's been banned, isn't it? It's been. I mean, it's the one I use.
Yeah.
P20 factor 50 is the one that I use, and I apply it in the afternoon as well. But I keep out of the sun. If I'm not in the pool, I'm under a sun lounger, and there's something. What was the guy's name?
Nick
is being alive is far more social than being dead.
There's a brand of...
So just get in the shade, bruv,
Again, the risk of sort of this isn't a plug because I have nothing to do with it, but there's a brand of sun cream called Altruist, which is very good value. You can buy it online. It's designed by a dermatologist, and there's a range of different products that often will suit different skin types. Some which is non-greasy, some which is thicker, some for the face, and that's a very popular one. And you can, I think he needs to use something which has got more sort of
physical block to it.
Block to it. And if you look at what the cricketers wear, what the surfers wear,
right.
I mean, not suggesting he wears war paint, but those sort of zinc-based sun creams, they're highly effective.
Okay, wow, all right, because we need to know this stuff, don't we?
Yeah.
As a group, because we're out all day.
Yeah,
we are.
And if you're wearing sunglasses, you can get it, it focuses the rays, can't it, on your nose?
Right.
Or like Danny and I were wearing glasses. So again, you might want to put a bit of zinc-based cream on your nose or around the areas that really, really catch the rays.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Rich has asked us, I would like to know if Dan had any other symptoms other than obvious skin symptoms, anything we should look out for that could potentially catch it early.
I didn't have any other symptoms other than this dark brown mole on the back of my arm that you saw there. Are there other?
Not really. An early stage skin cancer, that will be it. Any cancer that is in a more advanced stage, clearly there might be other symptoms relating to where that cancer's arisen. So again, there are a range of different symptoms generally to look out for signs of cancer. Change in bowel habit might be one. A cough that doesn't go away might be another one. Weight loss that's unexplained might be another one. Persistent pain somewhere in your body that hasn't got another explanation. There'll be a range of symptoms, but for skin cancer, I'm afraid early skin cancer would be very simple. It'd be something on your skin that wasn't there.
In a way, we're kind of lucky that it does manifest itself visibly.
Exactly.
That's the biggest.
That's the
key,
thing about
it?
Skin cancer. We should, for the majority of us, be able to spot it. Hopefully, at a stage which is nice and early.
What do you know Janet Ross from Lewisham?
Yes, I do.
She's a lovely lady, really nice. She's a dermatologist at Lewisham Hospital, and she said to me, take a photograph on your phone of your back and your front, and get your missus to take it or whoever, and then compare it every 6 months, whatever. Compare it, do another photograph of the same, and just enlarge it like we all do on our phone. Enlarge the picture up and just see if you can spot anything that's different from before. And I thought that was a good way to sort of self regulate, if you like.
That's right.
And what are you doing now, Dan, in terms of what you wear? Because that's obviously.
Yeah, I mean, on holiday, obviously, I'm very, very careful. I mean, I've said to Mark before, I went a bit red across my chest, like one afternoon, and he's like, Dan, you're all right. Like one thing like that, you haven't burned, you've gone a little bit red, you've caught it on your chest one afternoon. But I meticulously apply it in the mirror before I go down to the pool generally, or I'll just go into the loos by the pool and put the suntan lotion on in front of the mirror, factor 50. The hottest part of the day, that's sort of 1 o'clock till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm not in the sun at all. I'm out of it on the sunbed or gone round in the shade. There's always a bit of the pool that ends up in the shade early. Go and do that, be up in the room.
At
whatever.
the bar, surely, Dan.
I don't really drink anymore that much, mate, to be honest. I've sort of grown out of it all, or trained myself out of it all. But that's the thing, like getting drunk round the pool with your pals and the girls about and all that sort of thing, sun protection goes completely and utterly out of the window. And anglers, when they're fishing and they're fish spotting or whatever, or they're engaged in that, they forget about it. So in that and now when I'm fishing in the summer, get up, first light, looking for fish, have my first couple of cups of tea, and immediately put suntan lotion on at 7 o'clock in the morning. Back of my hands,
Good habit.
on my face, to unzip. I wear high. You've seen the high neck tops that I wear that come down to there. Unzip that, put it all round underneath it, so you're not just trying to do it but around the join. I always wear a hat. I pretty much always wear long trousers, even in the summer. Trousers I've got on now are prototypes that are like super lightweight, because it's not nice wearing long trousers if it's 30 degrees. So very little of me is exposed to the sun. I've got a ritual of putting the lotion on in the summer when I'm fishing. And like I say, on holiday, I can remember like burning so bad, my other half was like putting like calamine lotion or something on her after sun and could barely put it on me, in Thailand. First day there, all day on the beach with no lotion on whatsoever. But I also went on the sunbed repeatedly for far longer than you should have done, because we had the keys to the gym and we could just keep putting the tokens in, go on it for 45 minutes rather than 15 minutes. And you can smell yourself cooking under it,
Oh my gosh.
you can, there's a smell, but because you want to be big, brown muscles are bigger muscles, and it's just complete ignorance at the time. Back in whatever it was, the late 80s, complete ignorance to it. And, doing what we're doing now is one little step towards stamping that out, isn't it?
I know it's something that you would have looked into in detail when you designed the clothing that you brought out in the wake of all this, Dan. But what in terms of specifics, what does clothing have to do to be an effective block of this risk?
Well, I think it's probably better.
Well,
for Mark
some of the technical clothing will say on it, equivalent to SPF 50 or something like that. But actually, even just something that's comfortable, that I don't think it has to necessarily always be, if it's something that just covers you up.
You can wear a cotton shirt like you've got on there, and it's still giving some protection. Absolutely. It hasn't got an SPF, has it?
No,
but it's
absolutely.
still
Cotton shirt or any kind of comfortable clothing. I think it's more that you've got it on.
Yeah, I think I used to wear t-shirts all the time when I was fishing in the summer. I never wear a t-shirt now. I've always got long sleeve, high neck. I've always got a hat on. Very rarely do I wear shorts.
I'm sure it's not something you've dwelt on, Dan, but have you had cause to at least consider what you think led to the problem that you've got?
I think it was sunbeds more than it. But when you say you can remember burning, when I was 18, maybe 20, maybe my first holiday abroad, you went red before you went brown. That's how it works with blokes. You went red, and you went brown, and you peeled, and then you hope to get another tan before you came home to cover the peeling up. That's what it did for every holiday.
And I think it's important that we stress what the dangers of that are, if we haven't enough already, because I know that people still feel like that about the sun, that it's something to be done, that a tan is important.
Yeah,
I don't believe there's been the cultural shift in my generation, at least.
No, I think you're absolutely right. There's much more to be done, and people these days, if they really want to change their skin color, they can use fake tan and all of that. That's what a lot of women will do now, won't it? They'll be wearing fake tan rather than trying to get a sunbed.
I think kids nowadays are much more aware.
I hope so.
Far more aware than we ever were, and I don't think it's as cool anymore to super dark tanned. You know, I think the awareness is growing, and the more of these things that happen in every walk of life, not just fishing, but the more it's on television, you know, you should be sitting on the couch next to Phil and Holly, and do you know what I mean, preaching to them. I'd certainly come with you. You know, it's just got to be out there in the mainstream as much as possible, isn't it? And just keep being reminded the whole time.
Absolutely.
You know, dying isn't cool.
No, and
you know,
It could be on a t-shirt. That really,
yeah.
Mike's question here is kind of alluding to that, Dan, in a sense, and that's, he says that you probably know that most of the car pangs I come across don't use sunscreen. You're doing a great job, but they're not smart enough to take on board what you're saying. Hit them hard with something to shock them into wearing it. Is there a degree of sort of willful ignorance amongst a certain people? Do you think that people understand the risks but still don't do the prevention?
I think it's probably a bit like smoking, isn't it? You know, it's taken a long time for people to stop smoking, and people always said, well, it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen. You never think, you're mortal, do you, when you're young, and that it could happen to you. So it's somehow getting that message across, and that's why you need these big public awareness campaigns that we're running at the moment, and just get people thinking about it. You doing this kind of thing, Danny, to bring the awareness to your community is amazing. So that's what we need, and I think it will become, like it has been to some degree in Australia, it becomes not cool anymore to get a suntan or a sunburn. It's not a badge of pride anymore.
No, much like the smoking analogy is perfect in that sense, isn't it? Because it really isn't. Amongst most people now, it's kind of not cool, is it? Whereas it was. So
exactly, yeah.
But do you have, Dan, there is no silver bullet, is there, to make people understand? There's nothing harder hitting than what you've already shown.
No, exactly. If what I did with Simon and the blood draining out of Simon's face when I pulled those bottles out and put them on the bench there,
that was, that was shocking.
You couldn't get any. I don't think you could get any more hard hitting than that.
I've shown that clip to friends and family outside of fishing, and that's changed their whole outlook on sun safety and stuff like that. Just what you did there is enough to stop anybody, regardless of interest or whatever. Yeah.
So no, I think we just keep doing that, and this will last forever on YouTube and the podcast app on your phone and what have you, as the other one will, and we will just keep banging the drum about it all summer, every summer. Until everybody's seen it multiple times and it does start to sink in,
As a slight counter to that last question, Peter has said, "Hi Danny, I haven't got a question, but I would like to say thanks for your inspirational podcast. And listening to your story helped me come to terms with having advanced prostate cancer. For all the great things you've done in fishing, the podcast was the best. And hearing your story helped a lot. So I just want to say thank you." So
very nice of him.
Clearly, lots of people are listening as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the response from that first one was absolutely overwhelming. I didn't in the end get round to getting back to every single person that got in touch, but really moving kids that had never been fishing, that mum and dad sat them down because the dad went fishing, made them watch that, and they never put suntan lotion on. All the boys play football. Now they put it on.
Fantastic.
Every single time they go out. Now, whether that's still the case a year later, don't know. That's why it's important to keep doing these kind of things, to keep reminding people, because that ball of fire's up in the sky every day, whether we forget about it or not, it's still there. So, but I mean, the sunbed thing, I think they should just be outlawed, banned completely. I can't. There is the benefits do not outweigh the costs in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion. And being someone who has struggled with self-esteem, with being comfortable in my own skin, how I look, everything else, a lot of my adult life, I totally understand why people want to feel better about themselves, but you can do that by improving your self-esteem with good psychological techniques, where you don't have to go on a sunbed. You don't have to go to the gym and be ripped or anything else to feel attractive and feel good about yourself. You just have to learn how to bolster your self-esteem, through exercises that way. And it's far simpler and far less demanding than people would believe. And just to be comfortable in your own, you must think it for your little girl. As long as she's comfortable in her own skin, and she's not like battling with how she looks and everything. That's from a parent's point of view. You want that for your children, don't you? So yeah, I'd say anybody that's regularly going on or ever going on sunbeds, like it just is not worth it.
Rethink.
Yeah, it just isn't worth it.
There are a few recurrent themes here. So if we are slightly repetitive, then I'll make no apology because it's important.
Absolutely.
Harley has asked. Firstly, huge fan. Chuff the podcast back. 2 questions, if that's okay. As half Irish, half ginger. No, ginger was a nationality, but there we go. My complexion is that of Casper's paler cousin. Start of the summer, I usually burn, so apply cream well in advance. But due to working outside, by June and July, I've picked up some tan. Now, this tan doesn't seem to burn, so I apply less cream. And although the area never looks red, I feel the tan is hiding damage. Basically, should I apply cream any time I'm going to be exposed to the sun, regardless of my perceived risk of burning, or is the sun less damaging at times?
Yes, so I think that question comes from someone who's probably got what we call type 1 skin, so the sort of Celtic complexion, red hair, freckles, very sort of pale skin, really struggles to get a colour. Type 1 skin, that's the skin type that's got the highest risk of getting skin cancer, so absolutely do use the sun cream even if you've got a little bit of a colour there. So
I think just to dig down into that question a bit, even once he's got a tan, damage can still be done.
Absolutely.
So dropping the sun cream when you're tanned is kind of makes no sense, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Secondly, we all know that not all sun cream is equal. Is there anything we should look for when buying one? You kind of,
I think, just decent factor. So as we said, 25 or above. Doesn't matter too much the brand, I would say.
Because they all have to pass stringent tests, don't they, to be allowed to be sold?
They do. Any sort of reputable chemist or high street store will have a decent factor, but use it. Use plenty of it. You can't use too much of it.
Okay.
Can I just, sorry, Mark, do sun creams, is it called a UVA rating?
Yeah, there's UVA and UVB, which is another way of looking at it. And ideally you'll have one, Toby, thanks for bringing that up, which will have both UVA and UVB protection. But pretty much all of the general ones will have that now.
Right, okay. Do they have a rating of like, my missus has said once, like some have 5 stars.
Yeah, the stars, again, it sort of goes hand in hand usually with the SPF.
What's UVA and UVB then? What's the difference?
These are the different, now we're talking physics, so right, I'm going to be really out of my depth here, but you'll have many listeners and watchers will know much more about this than me, but these are the different wavelengths of light, and different ultraviolet light will cause different properties, different things to happen in the skin. And so ideally, and it was thought that certain UV light might be okay and others less good. And so they used to be able to get sun creams that would let a certain amount of UV light in and less of another type. But probably best to just minimize UV light altogether, to have high number of stars, both UVA and UVB.
So they're important to look out for then?
Definitely worth looking out for those as well. But again, most of your reputable sort of high street brands will have decent.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking to a lot of people listening to this who don't wear any for the whole summer when they're going fishing. So anything is a step forwards, and if they're not putting it on their kids, even when they go over the park, in Stevenage or whatever, you don't have to be in Marbella, if they're tearing around in the park all 6 weeks holidays, then the kids should be putting it on themselves before they go. So there's a level of personal responsibility. And my little girl puts her own lotion on now, in front of the mirror, and
how did you get her to do it, Dan?
Torture.
Right.
No,
cool.
No, she's. We've always spoken to her as an equal as much as we possibly can, on a level, not sort of talking, not sort of demanding it, but explaining it, and obviously with what I've been through, we can use that as, Daddy's wasn't careful with it and he's had to have all this stuff done. And we want you to enjoy it, but just be safe, darling. And there's a big thing, isn't there, about if a child can do something, let them do it. If they can make their own breakfast, let them make their own breakfast. they can get their milk out of the fridge and have their own milk in the morning rather than get them to do it. Build independence. And we've been really into that with Violet from the word go. And it shows big time.
And your own kids, Mark, did you?
So yeah, we were pretty strict with them with sun cream in a way that I hope that reflects what Danny said, them taking responsibility for it. So my kids are all now sort of young. I've got 3 boys. They're sort of young adults, sort of, making their own way in the world. But hopefully they got those messages, and they all love being outdoors. So the message is enjoy being outdoors, definitely, but just be careful with the sun exposure.
Well, we're talking about that because I heard from one of your colleagues that you're a bit of an action man on the quiet, and do you throw yourself out of planes?
I
and
love
ski
my
down?
skiing. I love my skiing. I've done heli skiing a couple of times.
No, you haven't.
I have done heli skiing. Yeah, it's
what's that? Jumping out of a helicopter?
Not quite jumping out. The helicopter lands on the top of a mountain,
right?
And you jump out, and then the helicopter disappears, and you're perched on the top of a mountain in the middle of nowhere, usually in the middle of Canada, and then you're with a guide, thankfully, who then you ski down off
Wow,
piste.
that's top level. That.
And then the helicopter
Mate, that's so
picks you-
cool. You've
picks you-
totally undersold that.
I'm saying,
I've been on skiing holidays and I've seen people do it. I've gone,
is it anyone else getting a Bond vibe here?
Yeah.
Mark for the next James Bond.
I would point out it's not a cheap holiday, so I've done it on special birthdays. Like every time I have a birthday with a 0 in it,
Yeah.
so every 10 years.
Yeah. And if you're skiing, is that something you got to take care of the sun when you're skiing?
Very much
as well?
so, yeah, because your altitude there, and
So the sun is stronger.
Yeah, and I did a season as a ski guide before I started medical school. So and again back in the late 80s. So again, goodness knows how much damage I did to myself. So up in high altitude, I was using skin factor 4 if I was feeling good.
Yeah.
So high altitude and the snow obviously reflecting all that sun back onto you. So much less of you's exposed, but you need to use your sun cream when you're skiing, or even if water sports would be another example where that where you get a lot of sun exposure. Yeah.
I think there's a couple of important questions in the few that are left here. Firstly, Darren has asked, I have a question. My son is 15 in September. He has a mole on the back of his neck, and every time it's sunny, I tell him to cover it or put sun lotion on. My question is, what are the signs, if any, we're looking for in a good-looking or bad-looking mole? I mean, I guess the point is that these are existing moles. Mark, what are we looking for?
Yeah, so melanoma can arise from existing moles. So a mole can turn, but just as equal, if not more commonly, it's a new mole in an area that didn't have one before. So he's being a great dad. He's looking out for his son, looking out for that area. But the sun cream needs to go everywhere, not just on that mole, I think is the point.
Yep.
And obviously, if that mole changes, get it checked out. But if there's new ones, again, get them checked out.
Okay, and Joe has he saw the Insta post and asks a couple of questions. Does putting sun cream or moisturizer on does putting after sun or moisturizer on help prevent melanoma?
No, definitely not. It just helps with some of the symptoms of sunburn, but definitely doesn't help with the prevention of the cancer.
And Joe's second question relates to melanoma spreading, which I think we've covered well enough that it does actually spread or can spread to other parts of the body if undetected.
Exactly. So caught early, cut out, very unlikely to come back. Few unlucky cases can do. If it does spread, it can spread either in the local area, into the local skin tissues, into the lymph nodes, or through the bloodstream. Those are the ways that can, and that's generally the case for cancer in general. Those are the ways that the cancer travels around the body. Okay.
Now, we really are coming to the bottom of these, Dan. I'm going to read a couple of, and they are longer ones, so right, bear with me. But sure. I'm going to read a couple that aren't necessarily questions, but I feel like it's these guys have written in, so we ought to
definitely.
One from Dennis here. I've seen the post on Instagram, and I'm happy to know that Danny is back. I was diagnosed as well with third stage melanoma, and luckily after a successful surgery on the 22nd of April last year, 2020, and radiotherapy, I can say that there are no signs of cancer now for 2 years. A year later, I had an FNH liver tumour removal. Mark can perhaps fill us in on that in a minute. For me, that was a harder experience, as it was a 6.8 centimetre slice taken out of his liver, and I've spent 24 days in hospital and watched every single Korda video.
Thank you.
I can clearly state that watching Korda videos and dreaming about fishing kept me alive.
Wow.
Today, I'm back and playing football 3 times a week, keep fishing and landing huge carp. I can't lift them alone, but the thrill of the hunt is great. I only use Korda tackle, spinners and chod rigs are my favourite, and still have some cog systems. I'm very sorry I can't get them anymore in Eastern Europe. I'm working with computers. However, since my diagnosis, I learnt sports psychology and am constantly learning about neuroscience, as I believe that mindset has a key role in the curing process. I don't really have any questions. I just want to offer my help in any form to the cause and would love to be part of this mission with Korda. Please let me know if I could help in any way in Danny and Korda's work.
That's lovely. Thank you very much for sending that in. I think the best way you can help is to check your mates when they're out in the sun and mate, have you got lotion on? Like, you know, like I see it so much, sitting on a bucket away from their bivvy, from their tent, away from the trees, sitting there just staring out at the lake, back exposed. Mate, have you got any lotion on? That's the best help you can give to any of your mates is to keep their awareness up. And just to check them, like, mate, that ain't cool. That you, like at Carp Academy, we take 30 kids fishing. Before COVID hit, we used to 15 instructors. You got 2 lads each, and obviously I was going through this when we did the last couple, and I'm like, lads, sunburn is a fail. Like, you're going to fail this Carp Academy. You're not going to get your certificate if you're burnt. It's a fail. And we're giving them, you know, boonie hats, wide rimmed hats, long sleeve tops and all that sort of thing. I say that when all the mums and dads are still there.
Fantastic.
And that's what it's about. It's just checking the people in your life and saying, sort it out, you know. That's really the best thing you can do.
Okay, and I think the last contribution from the guys who've spent time and contacted us is from Paul. This was a Facebook comment. I've been following your story, Danny, and I think you're doing great. Seeing how you've done has helped me come to terms with having throat cancer. I'll be starting my radiotherapy and chemotherapy in a few weeks. I've got to have a feeding tube fitted and have a mask made for the radiotherapy. Not so much a mask, more a frame for my head and shoulders to hold me in place while they nuke my neck.
He's still got a sense of humour, good lad.
All that and the side effects that I'm likely to get are terrifying. I know it's a different cancer, but to see how you're doing really does make me feel a little better. I'll be watching your podcast and hope things keep on the up.
Right, I can contribute to this. My older brother, half brother, went through exactly the same thing. It is tough at times, but he got through it, and he's completely and utterly clear. 5 years past. That you know, putting the mask on your face and everything. He found that you know, was it radiotherapy?
Yeah.
You know, he found that tough. He's 10 years older than me. He found that tough. His father is of Middle Eastern descent, and apparently the type of cancer that he had is more prevalent or something in that ethnic group or something. But he's through it. He's right as ninepence, you know, and it's like, just crack on, mate. Just go through it, crack on, you know. And my coach says to me, Dan, it's not the melanoma, it's how you're thinking about the melanoma that is creating all of this anxiety and stress for you. It's not the actual melanoma has given me no pain whatsoever. I've created the huge amounts of anxiety and stress myself because of the way that I've chosen to think about it. And that's what you say to yourself. I know for going through chemo and radiotherapy is completely different, and it is tough on the body. I know from my brother telling me about it, you know, but he got through it, you know, and you know, I think having that, like, you know, my coach Rob says to me, just imagine it's the bully, Dan. It's the bully at school. Just tell the bully to fuck off. That's what you got to do. Just say it out loud if you have to. Just tell it to fuck off. He said there's so much empowerment in doing that, you know, and when it's tough, that's what you should do.
Yeah, that's I've never heard that said before, but I think that's great, Dan.
And Mark, in terms of how you cope with being around cancer so much, There must be incredible highs associated with your work, but also lows. How do you deal with that?
I think we're a self-selected bunch who do this work because it doesn't suit everyone. Friends of mine who are surgeons or anaesthetists will ask exactly that question: how can you do that? Everyone's got cancer, isn't it miserable and depressing? But you only have to meet a few Dannys to realize actually humans are incredible. And it's actually, I found it a real privilege to be in this world and see people like Danny and others getting through it. And yeah, it's not always a happy ending, that's for sure. And there's some heartbreaking stories, and we feel very sad at times, with our patients. But it's a privilege to be there in that journey. And I'd like to think there's always something that we can do to make things better, whatever it is. Yes, it may be curative treatment for some people. It may be prolonging life for other people. It may be getting other people out of pain. It may be some really simple things, and it's teamwork. But it can be tough at times. That's why I have to jump out of helicopters every now and again to de-stress and do something different.
Sorry, Rich, I've got another question actually. It's from a member of staff within the company. I won't name them for obvious reasons, but it's a question for Mark, if that's all right. So it is. It says, not sure if you need a brief backstory, but I have a small round blemish that's appeared on my shoulder and become raised over the last 6 months and begin to cause concern. I sent an image to my GP who advised it to be a fungal infection. However, I'm still concerned, and my question is is it only moles that can turn into melanoma? Because if not, I would like to return to my GP as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think anything that's persisted, if it's a fungal infection, it doesn't usually persist like that. So I think that question is a really good one. It doesn't have to. I think moles don't have to be pigmented. They don't have to be brown. You can get skin cancers that are not pigmented. So any new lesion on the skin like that, it's difficult for someone to say on a photo it's completely benign. I think that's a great question. I think I'd encourage that person to be a little bit assertive, try and seek a face-to-face visit with the GP, and really, if they're not getting the answer they want, there's nothing wrong with saying, can you send me into a specialist? I'm worried that this might be something.
Yeah, don't take no for an answer. I would say, because I've seen it from both sides. Because I was initially I went to the NHS, and then it was through private health that I got to work with Mark. And the NHS is under massive. I mean, you do both, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And it's under massive strain, isn't it? And I understand why people are perhaps not given the level of attention that they would have liked. This guy in case in point. But there's nothing more important than your health. So just push. If you're worried about it, just push until you get, until you feel that you've really got the answer. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's too important not to.
Yes, yeah, definitely. But at the same time, just because it hasn't gone away doesn't mean it's skin cancer.
No,
either.
Exactly. Could easily be very innocent. I think a fungal infection is probably unlikely if it's stayed around, hasn't changed for that long. But could absolutely be innocent, completely. Most skin lesions that even skilled dermatologists take off will be completely benign. They say a sign of a good dermatologist is they take off 9 benign lesions for every one that's cancerous. That's a good thing. Could absolutely easily be benign, but don't take no for an answer if you're worried about it.
And sorry, again, just a question actually from my own curiosity, and I think other people will be able to relate to it as well. Obviously, with summer coming up and it's going to be really hot, what if there'll be people out there that will have a bad burn this summer, or might have already had a bad burn with something like that? What should is there any need to worry, or is it a case of
a single burn for most of us, most of us are not going to get skin cancer, and certainly not going to get melanomas, and many of us will have been sunburnt. But I think it's just say, well, look, that was a bit silly, that was a bit foolish. Don't feel guilty about it. The damage has happened. What did I do there? Why did I get burnt? Let me not do this again. I think that's all.
So if a one-off.
Unlikely to be a major issue, but rethink why it happened. I guess.
And Mark, in at the moment, because we're in the middle of Melanoma Awareness Month, and the work that you do with your charity. What does the future look like for this discipline of medicine, and where could we go with this? What's a good outcome for?
So a great outcome would be no more melanoma. No more melanoma, or no one dying of melanoma. How about that as an outcome? I think.
Up for that.
Yeah,
I'm bang up for that.
Yeah, no one dying of melanoma. So that means we either prevent it, or we catch it early, or if it's caught late, then we cure people. So those are the outcomes. No more melanoma. No more melanoma deaths. I think that's what we'd like to see.
Achievable steps that can get us there.
Definitely. I think the achievable steps. I mean, we've talked a lot, haven't we, about prevention. Not stopping people getting it, particularly our children getting it in the first place. Early detection, we talked a lot about. Those are fundamental. And then the science and the research is going on to find better and better treatments all the time. So it's sort of all goes hand in hand.
And actually, the crazy thing is, in terms of lifestyle factors that are associated with cancer, this is one of the real simple ones you can be on top of, isn't it? Just apply your sunscreen or stay out the sun if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes hand in hand with, not smoking, looking after your diet, not drinking too much, all of those other things that reduce the risks of all sorts of diseases. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think we're more or less there, Dan, are we? Did you have anything more to add?
I wanted to, I wanted to know how because obviously running this is quite a stressful pursuit. There's a lot of people working here, a lot of moving parts, a lot of things, a lot of challenges on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, I know, I can't imagine what you have to deal with day to day. How do you cope with it day to day? Forget the holidays and the big unwinding. What do you do?
What really keeps me sane is, I'm very blessed. I think being grateful, as you said, Danny, being grateful. I always feel very blessed. I'm very blessed with my relationship with my wife, my children, my family, my friends, and not a lot of people don't have that, do they? And they have, so I'm very blessed. That keeps me grounded. I'm the fifth most important person in the family. There's only 5 of us. So
when pets.
Well, yeah, we had a stick insect for a while, and it was neck and neck between me and the stick insect. That's why I don't want to get a dog, because I'll then be sick. The most important. So yeah, having a great family around me, friends, having fun. I'm a big believer in, for me, exercise and sport. I try and cycle to work when I can, do my sport, and that just makes takes my mind off things. Again, I'm not a brooder about things. I think that's my personality. I can move on from things. I don't overthink things, as many of my friends say. You don't think about anything, but don't try not to overthink too many things as well. Yeah, staying positive when one can.
Amazing. Well, I mean, thank you so much for traipsing across London.
No, it's a pleasure.
It was been fascinating, and I think hopefully the message is there, Dan. It's been reinforced.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's nice to hear a bit of the science behind it, and just it's just keeping it in people's minds. That's the most important thing. Is that Coca-Cola principle that everywhere you see it, it's reminding you to take it seriously, enjoy it, but take the sun seriously.
And thanks so much for this opportunity to be with you. And get the message out there to this really important group of people.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danny.
Cheers much.
The Thinking Tackle Podcast.